Welcome to Life Redacted, your trusted source for all things related to living life. We're here to help you navigate the twists and turns of this world, offering a fresh perspective on the complex stories that matter. Today, we are undertaking a deep dive into, really the very foundation of American governance. Okay, let's unpack this. We're tackling one of the most intense and consequential debates in modern American politics, the pursuit of accountability. The core question at stake is whether political opponents who allegedly engaged in systematic coordinated attacks against a sitting and former president should face legal consequences. Our mission today is to analyze source material that frames this choice not as, a political vendetta, but as a critical calculation between ensuring future justice and allowing widespread impunity for abuses of power.
Right. And this discussion, it really transcends partisan politics because it deals directly with the future authority of the American presidency itself. When we examine the life redacted materials, what Donald Trump faced was a multi-year, multi-pronged campaign, repeated, unprecedented investigations, two impeachments, and just constant legal and media warfare. The claim put forth in the material is that this was a systematic campaign, really, to undermine the executive branch using the mechanisms of the state itself. And if such a campaign is permitted to run its course without consequence, well, the precedent set for all future presidents is, frankly, chilling.
Yeah, chilling is a good word for it. And the sources remind us that this concept of accountability wasn't just a reaction. It was a promise made early on. We can trace this focus right back to the 2016 debate stage.
Ah,
Donald Trump's famous vow to Hillary Clinton that if he won, he would instruct his attorney general to seek a special prosecutor to investigate her. That was an explicit signal.
it absolutely was.
That single promise fundamentally altered the traditional sort of unwritten rules of Washington politics, didn't it?
It did, because that unwritten norm had long held that you simply do not prosecute high-level opponents from the previous administration, regardless of the alleged actions. It just wasn't done. That norm was built on the, well, let's say shaky foundation that political opposition shouldn't cross into criminal investigation territory. By challenging that, Trump signaled that he believed certain actions by political opponents constituted crimes serious enough to warrant federal prosecution, regardless of their status.
Which inevitably set the stage for the dramatic conflict we were discussing today.
Precisely. Sponsor Segment 1, Face Naturals Organic Skincare.
Speaking of things that matter for our well-being, let's talk about skin health for a moment.
Hmm.
Did you know that your skin isn't just your largest organ, but it's also vital in protecting your body and supporting overall health?
It really is fascinating how interconnected everything is.
Absolutely. And what you apply to your skin matters deeply because research suggests your skin absorbs a significant percentage of those ingredients, allowing them to enter your body's ecosystem.
Makes you think twice about labels, doesn't it?
It does. So if you're focusing on a healthy lifestyle, why would you compromise with conventional skincare products filled with ingredients that might, undermine your wellness goals? At Face Naturals, they focus on nurturing your skin with safe, natural, and effective ingredients that genuinely support your health and well-being.
It sounds like a much better approach.
It really does. Visit facenaturals.com to explore their range of organic skincare products designed to protect and nourish your skin from the outside in. That's facenaturals.uaa to save 10% on your next healthy skincare purchase. Healthy skin starts today. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We now move into the core evidence presented by the Life Redacted material, identifying what they term the coordinated assault. And we have to start right at the beginning of the Russia investigation with the now infamous Steele dossier, don't we?
We really do. This is presented as the foundation of the argument for prosecution. According to the Life Redacted view, the dossier was fabricated political opposition research paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign. The critical detail here, the one that gets emphasized, is that this document, which Christopher Steele himself later admitted in court, was based on unverified gossip and, frankly, unreliable sources, became the specific legal foundation for the FBI to secure Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrants. FISA warrants.
FISA warrants. And for those maybe less familiar, FISA is a process allowing the government to conduct surveillance on individuals suspected of being agents of a foreign power.
So, using fabricated evidence here, that's serious.
Extremely serious. The sources argue that this wasn't just, poor judgment or cutting corners. It was the knowing use of politically generated false information to initiate surveillance against a rival political campaign. That action, according to the Life Redacted perspective, is what launched the years of legal warfare.
And fundamentally corrupted the legal process. That's the claim. By weaponizing one of the government's most invasive surveillance tools based on essentially political dirt.
That corruption of process leads us directly then to the allegations concerning the leadership of the FBI and the intelligence community. Let's look first at former FBI Director James Comey. According to the Life Redacted material, Comey is heavily criticized for authorizing surveillance on campaign officials like Carter Page based on this discredited dossier. But the controversy doesn't end there, does it?
No, it escalates. The material details how Comey leaked memos containing classified information to a friend, instructing that friend to share the contents with the media. And the explicit purpose of this leak, according to his own testimony referenced in the source material, was to trigger the appointment of a special counsel.
The special prosecutor.
Exactly, someone who would take over the ongoing Russia investigation. This move is presented as a deliberate manipulation of the system to achieve a specific political outcome.
Effectively bypassing the normal chain of command.
Yes, and acting almost as a private citizen while still leveraging his prior governmental knowledge and access. It's a very pointed accusation.
And his deputy, Andrew McCabe, he was later fired for lying about unauthorized disclosures to the media.
Right, which, according to the Life Redacted, suggests a pattern, maybe even a cultural willingness among some top FBI leadership at the time to leak and manipulate information to drive the political narrative forward.
And this wasn't just limited to the FBI, the sources say.
No, that willingness, or alleged willingness, extended to the intelligence community leaders. Former CIA Director John Brennan and former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper are cited specifically. They're noted for their highly public roles in promoting the Russia collusion narrative, often on television.
Okay, but what's the core accusation against them? Promoting a narrative isn't a crime in itself.
The critical point here, according to the Life Redacted, is the claim that both men allegedly had access to classified information that indicated the investigation was based on fabricated evidence, or at least severely flawed evidence.
So the allegation is they promoted a narrative they knew, or should have known, was likely false.
Precisely. All while holding positions of immense public trust. That's the crux of the criticism.
The natural result, then, of Comey's actions was the Mueller investigation. And the scale and composition of this team that's often cited by critics when arguing for accountability.
Yes, the sources focus heavily on the appearance of bias. Special counsel Robert Mueller assembled a team that, as the Life Redacted points out, included at least 13 registered Democrats and, well, 0 Republicans.
Now, proponents would say that doesn't prove misconduct.
And that's true, it doesn't prove it, but it certainly fuels the narrative among critics that this was not perceived as a neutral investigation from the outset. They spent a staggering $32 million over 22 months. And the conclusion, ultimately, they could not establish a conspiracy or coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia.
So the core criticism, according to the Life Redacted, isn't really about the final conclusion itself. It's more about the intent and the effect during those 22 months.
Exactly. Critics argue the investigation's true purpose was political, to cripple the presidency.
How so?
By draining resources, generating this constant cloud of suspicion, creating endless media speculation, basically preventing the administration from focusing on its agenda.
And this was the result, critics claim, even though key players allegedly knew the outcome would likely be inconclusive from the start.
That's the allegation laid out in the material, yes, that it was process as punishment, almost.
Now, the assault wasn't just confined to the executive agencies, was it? The sources point to Congress as well.
Deeply congressional, yes. Let's talk about Adam Schiff, who is then the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee.
He repeatedly claimed there was, quote, evidence in plain sight of collusion. Claims that, according to the Life Redacted, proved entirely unsubstantiated by the Mueller report and later investigations.
Right. And the focus of the source material on Schiff revolves around his alleged tactics of manipulation.
What kind of tactics?
The allegations center on selectively leaking classified transcripts, particularly transcripts of interviews related to figures like Carter Page and George Papadopoulos.
Leaking them to achieve what?
To create a false, or at least misleadingly incriminating narrative in the public sphere. All while, allegedly, withholding the specific exonerating evidence contained within those very same transcripts. That's the claim.
That's a serious charge of manipulating public perception using classified information.
It is. And this alleged coordinated effort, according to the Life Redacted, became even more acute during the Ukraine impeachment effort.
How so?
The source details the claims that Schiff's committee coordinated closely with the whistleblower, despite his public denials of contact at the time.
So the implication is that the impeachment wasn't organic?
The suggestion is that the process was engineered for political impact rather than being triggered neutrally by facts as they emerged. It raises serious questions, according to Life Redacted, about the integrity and procedural fairness of one of Congress's most solemn duties.
Okay, shifting gears slightly, but still on interference. The sources analyze the actions of state election officials in key swing states during the 2020 election. The claim is that these officials allegedly changed voting procedures without proper legislative approval. Is that right?
That's right. And this is a critical constitutional issue. The Constitution generally gives state legislatures the power to determine the times, places, and manner of elections. The material cites instances where state officials, not the state legislatures, altered procedures, for instance, in Pennsylvania.
The mail-in voting expansion.
Exactly. The Life Redacted notes that massive expansion was later ruled unconstitutional by the state Supreme Court in a separate case, which highlights the question of who actually holds the authority to define election law.
In Georgia.
Similarly, in Georgia, officials entered into consent agreements that eliminated or weakened signature verification requirements for mail-in ballots, allegedly without explicit legislative sign-off. The claim presented is that these actions systematically altered election integrity processes through executive or administrative action rather than through the required constitutional legislative process.
Okay, and finally, in this section on the alleged assault, we have to look at the weaponization of prosecutors, specifically mentioning Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg.
Yes, the material highlights that Bragg not only campaigned explicitly on the promise to prosecute Trump, but also subsequently delivered on that promise.
But campaigning on prosecuting someone isn't illegal.
Yeah.
What's the specific legal criticism here?
The key legal criticism, according to the Life Redacted, is the mechanism of prosecution. Bragg elevated what were widely considered misdemeanor business record falsification charges to felonies.
How did he do that?
By using novel legal theories. Specifically, the prosecution argued that the falsification was done to conceal the commission of a second crime. In this case, allegedly violating federal campaign finance laws, which the state DA doesn't typically enforce.
So using a potential federal crime to elevate a state misdemeanor to a felony.
Correct. Critics argue this is an aggressive and frankly unprecedented application of state law. And critically, the Life Redacted points out, these prosecutions only began after Trump announced his 2024 presidential campaign.
Which leads critics to strongly assert the timing and nature of the charges were entirely political.
That's the assertion, yes.
So when you look at the totality of these alleged actions, from the campaign funding of false intelligence, the use of FISA courts based on that, the leaking by FBI leadership, congressional manipulation, state-level changes, and finally these legally aggressive state prosecutions, the sources argue this builds a case for a coordinated assault.
That's the picture the Life Redacted material paints, yes. A multi-front assault on a political figure and the office they held, using the levers of government itself. #3, historical context, and the case for justice. Which brings us to a really crucial historical perspective, because this raises an important question. Is seeking accountability for political opponents truly unprecedented? Or is it sometimes a necessary function of defending the executive branch itself?
That's a fascinating question because the scale today feels new, but the problem might not be.
Exactly. While the modern scale is certainly amplified by media and technology, the necessity for a president to defend the authority of their office against coordinated internal opposition, well, that's as old as the republic itself.
So presidents have historically understood that failing to protect the office could weaken the whole system.
Absolutely. The Life Redacted suggests they saw defense as an integral part of their constitutional duty. The material provides several compelling examples. Consider Thomas Jefferson. He believed the outgoing Federalist Party had deliberately weaponized the judiciary against him through the creation of the Midnight Judges.
And he didn't just accept it.
No, he didn't just ignore it. He actively pursued the impeachment of Federalist judges he believed were acting politically to undermine his presidency. He saw judicial politicization as a profound threat.
Okay, who else?
Then there's Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, faced with, literally, an existential opposition trying to break the country apart.
You didn't hesitate.
Not at all. Lincoln authorized the suspension of habeas corpus. He went so far as to arrest newspaper editors and even politicians who were actively publishing anti-union materials or undermining the Northern War effort.
That sounds extreme by today's standards.
It does, but he prioritized preserving the constitutional order over strict adherence to peacetime political norms. He viewed these internal opponents as essentially enemies of the state's continued existence in that specific crisis.
Any more modern examples?
Well, Franklin D. Roosevelt utilized his authority during World War II to investigate and sometimes prosecute opponents who were collaborating with or promoting the interests of Nazi Germany. And even if we acknowledge the widely criticized methods of Richard Nixon, who famously maintained a detailed enemies list, the underlying principle, as argued in the Life Redacted, remains valid.
Which is?
That a president must be able to identify and counter opponents who are actively working to undermine the execution of their constitutional duties. Otherwise, the office itself becomes ineffective.
So the key precedent argument here, according to the Life Redacted, is that if you allow systematic political persecution, abuse of power, and fabricated evidence to go unpunished,
You essentially encourage the exact same behavior in the future. You incentivize it. The failure to defend the authority of the presidency, critics argue, diminishes the office for every single successor.
But this leads right to the core legal authority question.
Yeah.
Does the president even possess the constitutional authority to direct the prosecution of former opponents? Isn't that politicizing the DOJ?
Constitutional scholars cited in the Life Redacted are pretty definitive on this point. Article 2 places the duty on the president to take care the laws be faithfully executed.
And that includes?
That duty is widely interpreted as including the prosecution of anyone who violates federal statutes, regardless of their political position or their previous role in government. The Justice Department, the Attorney General, they are extensions of the president's executive authority.
So the argument is they serve to ensure equal justice is applied to all.
Exactly. This view posits that the president wouldn't be prosecuting an opponent per se, they would be executing the law against individuals who allegedly committed specific federal crimes. The person's status is irrelevant to the law's application. Sponsor segment 2. Face Naturals Organic Skincare, mid-conversation.
Speaking of taking care and ensuring things are healthy, let's circle back quickly to our own health. In our pursuit of a truly healthy lifestyle, we often focus on nutrition and movement, which are crucial.
Absolutely. Diet and exercise are fundamental.
But sometimes we overlook the health of our largest organ on our skin. Did you know that the ingredients in your daily moisturizers or cleansers can actually penetrate deeply into your system?
It makes sense. It's porous.
Right. So if you're committed to protecting your internal health, you should probably be equally committed to protecting your body from external chemical stressors.
A holistic view.
Exactly. That's why we appreciate Face Naturals Organic Skincare. They eliminate the harsh, toxic ingredients often found in conventional products, providing safe, natural, and effective alternatives that really align with those wellness priorities.
Good to know there are options like that.
Definitely. Their mission is truly focused on health and well-being. Visit facenaturals.com to explore how their natural products can support your healthy lifestyle journey. That's facenaturals.com, and you can use code DEEPDIVE to save 10% on your next purchase. All right, back to the legal arguments. Here's where it gets really interesting, I think, delving into the specific statutory claims made by the Life Redacted material. If a new administration were to pursue accountability, what specific alleged crimes would actually form the basis of the case? It can't just be they were mean to the president.
No, absolutely not. The source material focuses on 3 critical, high-level federal statutes that these alleged actions may have violated. And these aren't just, technical violations. They are serious offenses that strike at the very integrity of government operations.
Okay, let's start with conspiracy to defraud the United States. That sounds broad, almost like a catch-all. But it's quite specific legally, isn't it?
It is. Legally, to prove this, prosecutors would need to show an agreement between 2 or more individuals, let's say, hypothetically, the Clinton campaign, certain FBI leadership figures, maybe intelligence officials, an agreement to obstruct the lawful functions of the government through deceit or fraud.
And how would that apply here?
The Life Redacted argues that the alleged coordination to promote a fabricated Russia narrative and then use the Steele dossier to obtain FISA warrants constitutes exactly this. The defrauding isn't necessarily monetary loss, it's the deception used to corrupt the constitutional duties and lawful functions of the FBI and the IC.
Okay, that makes sense. What's next?
Next, there's the issue of perjury and false statements. This one's more straightforward. The material specifically calls out individuals like James Comey, Adam Schiff, and John Brennan for allegedly lying under oath during congressional testimony or perhaps to federal investigators.
Lying under oath, that's a bedrock legal principle, right? Nobody is above the law when testifying.
Exactly. The material claims, for example, that Comey lied regarding the nature and purpose of his memos, that Schiff allegedly lied about possessing evidence and his coordination with the whistleblower, and that Brennan allegedly lied about certain CIA activities related to the investigation.
So the argument is simple. If they lied under oath.
Then the principle of equal justice dictates they must be prosecuted just as any ordinary citizen would be for the same offense. No special exemptions for high office.
Okay. And the third one, abuse of power under color of law. This relates to federal civil rights violations. What does that mean in this specific context?
Under color of law basically means abusing the authority granted by one's government position. Federal civil rights statutes prohibit government officials from depriving citizens of their constitutional rights, like the Fourth Amendment right to freedom from unreasonable surveillance without due process.
So the FBI surveillance.
The FBI surveillance of Trump campaign officials using evidence allegedly known to be fabricated, according to the Life Redacted, is presented as a specific example. Officials allegedly used their formal legal authority, the FISA process, for an unjustified political purpose, thereby constituting a potential federal civil rights violation against those individuals.
Got it. The sources also broaden the scope beyond just the Russia investigation, right? Bringing in election interference claims from the 2020 cycle.
Yes, particularly the systematic suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Which is now verified as authentic.
Right. The material focuses heavily on the action taken by major platforms, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, to actively suppress that story just weeks before the 2020 election. This censorship, the sources claim, was significantly amplified by and perhaps coordinated with the release of that letter signed by 51 former intelligence officials.
The letter calling the laptop Russian disinformation.
Exactly. The accusation is that these 51 former officials, allegedly knowing or strongly suspecting the information was likely authentic, deliberately used their collective institutional authority and credibility to mislead the public and influence the election outcome.
That's framed as a massive coordinated political interference campaign using national security credentials as cover.
That's the framing presented in the Life Redacted material, yes.
And when you aggregate all these actions, the alleged fabrication, the abuse of federal surveillance, the potential lies under oath, the coordinated interference in the election, the source material suggests the collective effort could potentially meet an even higher threshold.
Yes, it suggests that the sum total might constitute seditious conspiracy.
Seditious conspiracy. That's a very, very serious charge. Reserved for...
It's a charge typically reserved for those who conspire to overthrow or destroy the government, or, crucially, to forcibly prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States.
And the argument connecting that to these events is...
The argument presented is that a coordinated, systematic effort by government officials and political operatives to fabricate investigations, abuse state power, and use state mechanisms to delegitimize and potentially attempt to remove a lawfully elected president. That this itself constitutes an attack on the constitutional order, that it hinders the execution of the laws and duties of the executive branch, potentially fitting the statutory definition. It's a provocative claim, but it's laid out in the material. #Tag4V, the resource, unity, and slippery slope concerns.
Okay, we absolutely must now turn to the arguments against prosecution, because critics raise very valid and serious concerns about the stability of American democracy if this path is pursued. The most significant concern, the one you hear discussed most often, is the slippery slope argument.
Absolutely, and it's a powerful argument. Critics contend that initiating this process, prosecuting opponents from the previous administration, establishes an incredibly dangerous retributive precedent. The fear, the real fear, is that the United States would enter an endless cycle. Each incoming president immediately targets the predecessor's allies, their investigators, maybe even their political financiers.
Turning the legal system into a political weapon.
Exactly. Transforming the legal system from, ideally, an impartial arbiter into just another tool of political vengeance. And that, they argue, leads the country down the path toward becoming a banana republic. It's not a trivial concern at all. It's a profound worry about institutional stability.
Then there's also the practical argument, the resource drain argument.
Right. Critics ask, should America really spend potentially billions of dollars and consume its finite federal court resources on settling past political scores?
We saw the Mueller probe cost $32 million.
And that was focused primarily on one central question. Multiplying that kind of effort across potentially dozens of high-profile defendants, critics argue it would divert attention, personnel, and money from genuinely critical national security threats and other pressing criminal justice needs Is it the best use of resources?
And finally, the unity argument. You hear this a lot too.
We do. Many analysts and, frankly, citizens across the political spectrum believe that America is deeply fractured right now and desperately needs healing. They contend that the best path forward is to essentially grant a political amnesty of sorts. Focus solely on governing forward, avoid further division, and deliberately choose not to pursue old political battles in the courts, even if wrongdoing occurred. Let bygones be bygones for the sake of unity.
Okay, those are three strong arguments against. Now, according to the Life Redacted material, the proponents of prosecution offer a very strong rebuttal to those concerns. Starting with the slippery slope. Is this truly a slippery slope, or is it framed as necessary correction?
This is where the source material draws a sharp distinction. It differentiates between normal, even aggressive, political disagreement and actual criminal misconduct involving abuse of power. The rebuttal argues forcefully that the crimes alleged here were not standard political opposition. They involved, allegedly, the systematic abuse of government power, the fabrication of evidence used for surveillance, lying under oath, and targeting citizens using federal resources.
So the counter-argument is that allowing systematic crimes of this nature to go unpunished is actually the greater moral failure. And that's the real slippery slope.
That's precisely the counter-argument. It's framed as the difference between fabricating charges for political reasons, which would be the feared banana republic scenario, versus enforcing existing laws against documented abuses of power by political figures. They argue only the latter restores the rule of law.
So allowing these specific alleged crimes to go unpunished encourages repetition, making future abuses more likely.
That's the core of the rebuttal. The source material quotes Professor Jonathan Turley, a legal scholar, who argues that selective non-prosecution based on political considerations is itself a form of corruption.
Interesting. Selective non-prosecution is corruption.
Yes. The point being made is that if you choose not to enforce the law against powerful individuals simply to maintain a perception of unity or to avoid a messy political fight, you are effectively enshrining a two-tiered system of justice.
One for the politically powerful and one for everyone else.
Exactly. And that two-tiered system, they argue, is far more corrosive to public trust in the long run than any temporary political fallout from prosecutions.
And the two-tiered system directly impacts public faith in the rule of law. The Life Redacted cites a 2023 Rasmussen poll.
Yes, finding a staggering 67% of Americans believe the justice system treats people differently based on their political connections. 67%.
That's a huge number. It suggests the public already perceives a problem.
It does. It suggests that the fear of a slippery slope leading to judicial corruption might be eclipsed by the public's perception that significant political bias and corruption already exist. From this perspective, prosecution is seen not as a partisan act designed to create a two-tiered system, but as a necessary surgical action to dismantle an existing one and restore faith.
By showing that nobody, not even a former FBI director who lies or a CIA director who leaks, is above the law.
That's the essence of the argument for accountability presented in the Life Redacted material. It's framed as restoring the principle of equal justice. #TAG-V synthesis and final verdict. So if we synthesize this, if we look at the ethical and legal imperative for prosecution, the argument ultimately rests on that bedrock principle of equal justice under law. That principle demands that former officials who allegedly engaged in illegal activities, whether it's leaking classified information, knowingly fabricating evidence used in court filings, or lying under oath to Congress, must face the same potential penalties that any ordinary person would incur for similar conduct. Their prior high status should be irrelevant to the application of the law.
And this isn't solely an American ideal, is it? The Life Redacted reminds us that international standards support this.
That's right. Specifically, United Nations principles on the independence of the judiciary underscore the fundamental idea that all persons must be equal before the courts. Providing blanket political immunity based purely on status or previous office is argued to be a violation of these foundational, globally recognized principles of law. It suggests a system not based on law, but on power.
So what does this all mean for the future then? The source material makes a powerful case that if a president chooses not to pursue accountability for these alleged systematic abuses, well, the message sent to future actors is potentially far more dangerous than the message sent by prosecution.
The argument is laid out quite starkly in the materials. What happens if the decision is made implicitly or explicitly? that FBI directors can lie and leak classified information with impunity.
Or that Congress members can manufacture evidence and conspire with whistleblowers without consequence.
Or that election interference is permissible if done by high-level intelligence officials working under political cover. What message does that send down through the entire system?
The sources contend that allowing successful, coordinated political persecution using the tools of the state to go unanswered is the true destroyer of democratic norms. That inaction is the more dangerous path.
Correct. The Life Redacted material concludes essentially that the precedent of enabling powerful figures to abuse the tools of the state against political rivals without legal consequence is far more damaging to the nation's long-term integrity than the precedent of holding those figures criminally accountable under existing laws.
And as we touched on earlier, this view seems to resonate with a significant portion of the public. It isn't just a niche legal argument.
No, that 2024 McLaughlin poll cited in the material really supports the idea that there's a widespread demand for accountability. 58% of Americans believing former government officials who allegedly committed crimes while opposing Trump should be prosecuted.
And crucially, that includes significant portions across the political spectrum.
Yes, 34% of Democrats, 61% of independents, and 89% of Republicans. That broad consensus, spanning partisan lines to some degree, suggests the public tends to view the issue through the lens of fundamental justice, not just partisan score settling. Sponsor segment 3, Face Naturals Organic Skincare, toward the end.
Before we leave you with our final thought today, just one more quick reminder that thinking about health should be holistic. It includes what we put on our bodies, not just in them.
A good point. Skin health matters.
It really does. By choosing natural products like those from Face Naturals, you're making a conscious choice to minimize chemical exposure and support your body's largest defense system, your skin. Visit facenaturals.com today to learn more about achieving a healthy lifestyle from the outside in. Okay, so the choice presented by this deep dive, based on the Life Redacted analysis, really boils down to justice versus impunity. The analysis reveals that the issue extends far beyond one person's political career. It's framed as a crucial referendum on whether America remains a nation where the rule of law applies equally to everyone, regardless of power or connections.
Or whether it becomes a nation where political connections effectively grant immunity from accountability for even serious alleged abuses of power.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider as you process all this. If constitutional government requires leaders to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, what level of coordinated political attack, especially one using the mechanisms and resources of the state itself, like FISA courts and classified information, what level constitutes an attack on the constitutional order that demands a legal consequence?
Where must that line be drawn to ensure the survival of impartial governance and the principle of equal justice under law? It's a tough question with profound implications. #Shock1.
Thank you so much for listening to Life Redacted. We truly appreciate having you join us each week to explore the life, insights, and conversations that matter. Your support means the world to us, really, and it's what keeps us going. If you enjoy what you hear, please consider subscribing to stay updated on our latest episodes. And give us a like to let us know you're enjoying the show. It really helps us reach more listeners like you.